How's everybody doing tonight? Thank you very much for showing up. We really appreciate it. I just stepped into this role, and so, not knowing how many people, sorry. You guys mind since I'm way up here not wearing the mask? I wasn't sure how many people would be showing up, so I'm very excited to have anybody here, and thank you very much for coming. It actually looks like we have a pretty good turnout. Before we get started, though, we are in the Colorado Discoverability Building, and they've let us use this community room here. I'm going to bring Michelle up here. She actually works for CDA, and she's just going to talk a little bit about what CDA offers and what they do.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm with Colorado Discoverability, and we do adaptive outdoor recreation for people with disabilities. And we've been around since 1980, and we're getting ready to gear up to do our program at Powderhorn and do adaptive ski lessons. So that's the season that we're in right now. During the winter and during the summer, we are an outfitter. So we do quite a bit on the river, and the river is real important to us, and keeping it clean. And working with people with disabilities is always a challenge to try and get out and transfer from boats and things like that. So making things more accessible are a big part for us. And I'm just very pleased to be here. We're open. If anyone wants to give us a call, information, we're here, and we're very happy to be a part of this. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at any time.
Do you have recumbent bicycles here that people can rent or use?
We do programming. We don't really rent them out, but we do get people out, get them fitted. We work with Colorado e-bikes quite a bit as well. They'll send people over here to try our bikes and help fit them, and we'll ride. But I can take you on a tour once we get finished with all this good stuff and show you the building and what we do have. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. So the Grand Valley Paddling Club has been around since 2017, and it was being run by John Whipple. And he recently decided that he needed to step down to pursue other things. And a few people sent in applications, and he accepted my application to take over the club. So this is my first introduction into the club and bringing things together. One of the first things I did was basically on Monday, the BLM announced this comment period, and on Wednesday I walked in the door. So I kind of hit the ground running and tried to do everything I could to get this meeting going and to get people aware that this comment period was happening, because these comment periods are very important. But along with that, I started to reach out to several people to try and put together, not necessarily a board, but we're calling it a steering committee. And the steering committee is going to be, for the next year, we're going to take and establish all the things that hadn't really been established yet. Just little paperwork things, but then also determining what the direction of the club is going to be. And we are actually looking for feedback on those things. So if you guys have some things that you'd like to see the club start to do, we would welcome that. gvpaddle@gmail.com is the current email address that we're giving out to the public. We're working on getting things set up to where we'll have more official, emails pretty quickly here. But basically, we have our committee that has formed. Right now, we have 5.5, 6 people, and we're going to be meeting sometime in January to discuss the direction and things that we'd like to see the club do. Obviously, we all have a million ideas of things that we'd like to do. We want to try and prioritize those things so that we're not running around in circles chasing our tails. So, as far as that goes, I would like to introduce the committee members that are here. Michelle, who is just up here. We all wear multiple hats, by the way. I volunteer with CDA all the time. Michelle actually works for CDA. But Michelle was the first person to step on, and she is acting as our treasurer secretary right now. She's handling all of our paperwork and making sure that the government is happy with us. So thank you very much for all your efforts, Michelle. And second person to join is Dave Grossman. Dave Grossman's got a lot of experience working with land managers for a lot of different organizations, and there are too many to list, so I'm not even going to try. But Dave's got a lot of experience doing these types of clubs and advocating and working with land managers. So thank you very much, Dave, for stepping up. And Tor Larson here. He's also stepped up. Tor's been on a couple of boards himself. What's the disc golf club?
Yeah, doing disc golf. Started off with the Cameras Coalition.
Yeah. So
river systems back to normal.
So we're bringing in some experience with this. Other people that are joining us are Sarah Stokes. She couldn't make it here tonight, but Sarah is the one who basically she was running down the river, saw all the trash, got really upset, and said we need to do something about this. And even though there was at least one river cleanup here, she said we need to have two. And so she incorporated Tora here and a couple of other people and said, hey, let's throw another river cleanup. And amazingly did a really good job with it, even though she only had a couple of weeks to throw it together. And when I heard that story, I was like, we need her. So we brought Sarah on, and then also Elizabeth, who is one of the owners of Grand Junction Sub. She's a big advocate for the river, and you know, they're out here, their building is right on the other side of Las Colonias here. And so I think we have a powerhouse of a team here with a lot of experience, and hopefully we can bring together a really good club experience for people. So. But we're here actually to talk with the BLM and to find out more about this plan that they've got. I'm going to introduce Zach here, and Zach's going to kind of give us a brief overview, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So, thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle and CDA, for hosting us. Quick, cool side story. My first volunteer activity as a youth was with CDA, taking some folks down the river. So really cool to be coming full circle here. But yeah, my name is Zach Kelly. I'm an outdoor recreation planner, and I'm the project lead for this Gunnison River action that we're in a comment period for. And so I'm just going to provide a little bit of context to how we got to where we are, what your involvement will look like right now, and what your involvement can look like in the future before this is fully implemented. So with that, just to be clear, we're talking about the Gunnison River through Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Area. So over here is Confluence Park and Delta. We're talking about BLM land that is between here and the Whitewater takeout. Nothing downstream, nothing upstream, just that section there. That's been some of the confusion I've received in phone calls and emails about other sections of the Gunnison, but just to be clear, that's what we're talking about.
How long is that? Sorry.
Oh, no worries. It's about 31 to 32 miles from, I think 32 miles is representative of Confluence Park. Yeah, from Confluence Park to Whitewater. And we include that just because we do receive a lot of people floating into the NCA from Confluence Park, and so we kind of are viewing the river through that lens. But right, go for it, sir.
So from Confluence Park to the Whitewater takeout is about 59 miles.
Wow.
59?
From Escalante to Bridgeport is 13, from Bridgeport to Whitewater is 12 and a half. And then
So that section from Confluence Park is being included in consideration, but it's not actually falls within the NCA, so it's not actually being regulated, or?
The only actions we're going to be taking with this pertain to campsites, and those are going to be strictly on BLM land within the NCA. So, yeah. But yeah, so 59 miles. Thanks for that. So right now, with the proposed action that is available for comment for another 7 days, we have 16 sites on there, and they're broken up into these different segments. You'll see that there's the word potential in front of it. That means there's no impact on the ground right now, and our river rangers don't currently patrol it as a frequently visited site. Everything else is regularly used, and you can visit there, and it looks just like a campsite. So a little bit zoomed in just to see kind of the breakup of the sites at the different segments. This is from Escalante to Dominguez. This is Dominguez with the 4 existing sites there and 1 proposed. And then from Bridgeport to Whitewater. So like I said, I wanted to share with you guys kind of how we got to this proposed action. Going back a ways, the area becoming an NCA with the passage of the Omnibus Public Lands Act in 2009 directed us to develop a resource management plan, which guides most of our decisions over recreation, wildlife, science and education, and outreach. Everything kind of comes back to the resource management plan. And that was developed in conjunction with an advisory council that was made up of diverse stakeholders and local governments and just interested parties that convened over 40 times to come up with this. And they identified the Gunnison River as an area needing extensive recreation management so that certain outcomes could be preserved for us and people into the future. And some of their recommendations pertain to what we're focusing on with this proposed action. Designated campsites, allocating commercial use, implementing a reservation system, and a lot of it spoke to implementing it before adverse impacts arrive and necessitate it. So his mask is kind of going all over. So this is this is language directly out of that, and so you'll see like managing campsite allocation at Dominguez Canyon to achieve a commercial split between, or a 50-50 split. And John actually left. He was the gentleman who was most interested in that.
Right.
Yeah. What's that?
He had to go.
But that's kind of where we got that number for the commercial allocation split. And this is also where we've gotten the other elements for the proposed action on the Gunnison River is the Dominguez Escalante Advisory Council that met over 40 times. They saw these as a means of preserving the experience in the river corridor.
So did he get a chance to talk to you before?
Yes.
Okay. Because it seems like I was on there and you were supposed to be able to comment, but I don't think I could find that. I couldn't get to that.
If you're on the page, it's in the upper left-hand corner. If you scroll all the way to the top, is where you get the link to be able to comment.
Okay.
I can pull it up on my laptop when we're done and show you.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right.
Yeah.
Zach, while we're here, just one point of clarification. Hi, everyone. My name's Dan Van Horn. I'm with the BLM as well. Right now, we're in what's called the public scoping period, and I have a lot of sympathy for folks outside of federal agencies because it's super confusing. Public scoping, we keep saying there's a proposed action right now. There really is not a proposed action yet. The point of a public scoping period is to shape that proposed action. So we're looking at for public feedback right now to help drive that proposed action and then a full range of alternatives. And then that goes into that final environmental assessment. And then typically what happens is after we develop that environmental assessment with that proposed action that's shaped by the public scoping period, we have what's called the public comment period. So that comes afterwards. That's after the proposed action is shaped. So this stage right now, we're looking for public feedback to shape that action.
Okay.
So the proposed action is that we're going to take action.
We're going to take action at some point.
There we go.
We do have an action that's fleshed out and described and we can go and look at. But at the same time, we're looking for public feedback to help shape that specifically to its form.
Yeah, thanks for that. This is also my first public-facing project, so any nuances like that I'm not super clear on, thank you, Dan, and I apologize in advance. But in addition to, like Dan's saying, we're using this scoping period to shape our alternatives and proposed action. Additionally, over the last 2 boating seasons, there we go. Yeah, Dave was mentioning there's QR codes available at some of the kiosks at Bridgeport and Escalante and Whitewater right now. And right now, if you go to them, they take you to a dead-end link. Well, over the past 2 boating seasons, we've been using our free self-issue permit system that we implemented to solicit feedback to get input to get us to this point now. So we're very keen on the public and the users shaping how their river is managed. So yeah, like I said, that the overnight permit was implemented in boating season of 2020, and we've just been using that to kind of guide decision, to guide our thinking in implementing a designation of campsites, commercial allocation, and considering the entirety of campsites for reservations. And so kind of the why, like I mentioned, one of the emphases from the resource management plan and the advisory council was implementing these management actions before there's adverse impacts from overuse on the river. I've talked with a lot of folks, some of them might be you, but you know, a lot of people remember what the Colorado River on Ruby Horse Thief was like leading up to the current permit system, and nobody really wants a repeat of that. So we're trying to stay ahead of the ball there and preserve a different river experience on the Gunnison. And the permit system is kind of a way that we see as a means by which we can enhance awareness of the resources and protect them, and just kind of convey the rules of the river. And it's should be mentioned too that fees are being considered as well. That'll be a separate action. It will go before a different body for approval, but there will be a public comment period on that as well. But like I said, that's a separate action that'll follow on a different timeline. So our next steps, we've got another week to provide those comments. Randall will cruise through how we can do that on here so that everyone's in tune with that, so we can get a good number of comments and repeat comments, or a quantity of comments on a certain issue that speaks to us as we're reviewing them. So, yeah, repetition is good. And like Dan was saying, that's going to help us draft our EA, and then that EA is going to have our environmental analysis. That will have a public comment period. That's when we'll have a refined proposed action and alternatives, and the public will have another opportunity to comment on that before anything is implemented. And then, as I said before, the business plan for the fees and all that, that'll be a separate action down the line. Now, is that clear as mud? How can we help with clarification? Dave?
So quick question, do we have any, or can you share any information about use, how many user days, commercial versus private, how many people pull permits, how many people are just doing day trips? Do you have any numbers for that?
Yeah, so the self-issue permits, that actually brought a lot of clarity to what the use looked like. We had about 1,400 unique users voting season, or groups, I should say. And
sorry, camping.
yeah, overnight. Yeah, our estimates for day use are not refined.
Is the self-issue permit didn't involve day users?
No, it was we're the permits kind of drill down to what campsites people are using. That way we can get an idea of the spatial and temporal dispersion of overnight use, just because we're focused on the campsites right now. Yeah.
Will this permit system in any way affect the use, or is it specifically for campsites?
Specifically for campsites. Day users will not be affected.
So these self-issue permits, how would you know where you can get them? I mean, is that just commercial or is that private and commercial?
Right now they are at Escalante and Bridgeport, and there's a drop box at Whitewater, all of the boat ramps, and then there's additionally a sign upstream from Escalante for folks that might put on at Confluence Park and float into the NCA.
I must have missed all that.
I didn't see it either.
Packing my bag.
It's right at boat launch, yeah. But it's when you're at, Escalante though, it's up on the right. But yeah, as opposed to the side with the, just with the box with the permits.
Oh, it was completely empty when I was there, that's why I didn't see it.
So we've got some overnight numbers, which is good. Do we have any sense for day use, or is it kind of unknown?
I wouldn't feel confident speaking to a number. We have some gated methodology for estimating it, but it's our estimation from 2019 to 2020 when we implemented, it dropped drastically. It was a very large change once we got more objective data from the permits. So
we have traffic counters in Escalante Canyon. And just based on visual observation from rangers in the field, we've made some calculations of, oh, the X percent. We are not calculating those numbers, though. They vary, year to year. So.
So last piece on my question is, how about commercial versus private use for the self-issued permits?
for the selfish, commercial use.
So last piece on my question is, how about commercial versus private use for the self-issued permits?
For the selfish, commercial use came in, I think we had fewer than 40 nights this season.
I have a total of 1,400.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
So that does bring up the question, why did they get a 50%?
This being copy and pasted from the resource management plan, right here, manage the campsite allocation at the mouth of Gunnison Canyon to generally achieve a 50-50 split. So right now, with this being a public comment period, we're definitely looking for comments on something like that. But right,
just to get on that question there, because you look at those use numbers and it's 1,400 overnight users and 40 of them are, you're looking at it something like 3%. You just go off those numbers are commercial use and 3% 50%. So the 50% allocation there is just for commercial use of campsites at the mouth of Gunnison Canyon. Or 4 campsites at the mouth. That's where that 50 split. Those are the campsites that are, we feel, or based on feedback that we've gotten, are most desirable.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants.
It's what everyone wants. So giving outfitters an opportunity to sell that trip.
Well, I don't think anybody's against outfitters being able to, have an equal opportunity, but, in an instance where there is no outfitter getting a permit, how is that handled where, are you gonna have 50% of the permits not being used at all? Or are you gonna open that up to the general public?
Well, that's the beauty of publish. Let Zach answer. Zach's up there.
Sorry.
So right now, our thinking is, and obviously, we're slightly biased towards what we do on Ruby Horse Thief because that's managed out of the same office. But we have a period where commercial outfitters can submit their trips, their planned trips, the August before the next boating season. Then we either fill up to their threshold of 17% on Ruby Horse Thief, and if they don't use it, then it becomes available on the rolling reservation window on recreation.gov. So we would probably do something similar, but yeah, we would definitely not reserve empty campsites and leave them empty if, it's a busy weekend and there's public wanting to get out there.
So the split for Ruby Horse Thief is what, then, commercial versus private?
That's 18% for commercial, max, Friday and Saturday nights, for commercial use, and then the rest is open to public, and that has not been met yet.
So why would they make this 50? Like that's
It's just.
So like I said, that number, it's rather arbitrary. It's pulled from the resource management plan.
so we
We're-
can comment.
Yes, please comment. Yes, please.
Yeah, I believe that the answer is that they haven't allocated, they haven't said it.
Yeah.
So the reason why Dave and I are bringing this up is because we want to make sure people know if this is something you're concerned about.
Right.
You know, because there is an opportunity for that to fill up to where they are getting 50% of the river. And, you know, hopefully we're not on the rivers anymore because we're all gone, but, you know, who knows what will happen. But anyways, we need to comment on these things so that they know, because yeah, 50/50 seems a little bit high. And especially if Ruby Horse Thief, which is a far more popular run, is only getting 18%.
Right. But it's throwing the number out there. We gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So start.
And it's not just us, they're being directed by the resource management plan that was finished in 2017. And so where that number came from to be put into the resource management plan, we don't really know, but it's out there, so they have to kind of continue with that continuity. But it gives us an opportunity to say, that doesn't sound right.
Right.
Especially because I think we have a great example of a system that's working quite well, just down the street from there.
Right.
So this would be a great area to help.
Just looking at this right now, and I don't recall, it was probably some direction back in 2017 from our research management advisory council. But there's some lovely language in here. I would call it language. But if you look at it, it says allocation of the map of the biggest canyon. There's a fun word after that. Generally achieve a 50/50 split. So there's probably some foresight back there, not knowing how feasible this would actually be when it comes to implementation. So that's why I say this is a sticking point right now. A 50/50 split at the map will get the biggest, because those really are the most desirable campsites. Yeah, but you know, yeah.
Right.
I know you also have height.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
is that bad? Talking about the camping for hiking and walking now.
Yeah, so that actually is implemented currently from May 1 to Labor Day. Campsites along the Gunnison River and the Dominguez Escalante NCA are for non-motorized float boaters. And if you walk across the footbridge at Bridgeport, if you can read English, there's a sign right there that says campsites are for non-motorized boaters only. So if there's, we don't have a whole lot of enforcement on that, but,
They can go a little ways up the canyon.
oh,
Technically, no.
Oh.
And once you cross it, this gets way longer. When you get into the wilderness, and technically that day use area in the wilderness extends a good ways. It's about 5 miles up Big Dominguez Canyon, 4 miles up Little Dominguez. There's some areas you can tuck into like Dry Fork or Big Dominguez and camp, but technically the wilderness. No, so we have a.
so, I mean, we might as well.
So, give a map.
Roughly.
If you're hiking into Big Dominguez Canyon, quarter-mile buffer around the Big Dominguez Creek. At that quarter-mile buffer around Big Dominguez Creek, you can see this peak area over here. It's technically day use only. So to hike in, you have to hike a good ways to get to a spot where you can eat where you can. And compliance on that is pretty high, and that's really to protect the sense of cultural resources that is prime people or cheap habitat. Out of the advisory council meetings, the resource management plan, really felt that the impacts that can't be there are really just need to be managed resources that level. You have to go away as you can if you're hiking.
Okay.
We're not special use permits
Uh,
for the river.
yeah, so are you asking as far as acquiring them?
Yeah, we have, Upper Colorado, Moab, Ruby Horse Depot, and
She's asking us.
for SCDA.
CDA,
We
yeah.
still have the opportunity to, as an outfitter, to have special use for a population.
Yeah, absolutely. So generally, I believe Alex Martin is our SRP recreation planner, so she's going to know all the fine details on that. But generally, on an annual basis, she accepts applications correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it's in the month of August. But there's always exceptions and.
So this proposed action addressing camping permitting is a different piece of the SRP process.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. That, everything stays the
They're
same.
gonna be compatible.
The permits,
So Michelle, if you want to apply for this job.
yeah.
And that leads to another question, how much thought has been put into the accessibility of these campsites, as well as the takeouts at Bridgeport and Whitewater?
So that is, part of where the fees come in as a desirable thing from our standpoint is it's not a secret that the put-ins and takeouts are rather inaccessible. So to improve those, that would be a realistic way to obtain it in a reasonable amount of time. If it's left to our budget and whatnot, it's difficult to achieve.
But we're not allowed to talk about money yet, because that's on another.
It's a separate action.
So you get us to agree to it, and then it's well, and I don't mind paying for a permit, but I would like to know that the majority of the money for my permit goes towards the services that I'm using on that stretch of river.
Yeah.
But definitely notorious takeouts on that river.
Mhm.
And confined by the third nation of the railroad. Difficult entity to work with.
Yeah,
Oh my God, it's a story.
but you do get a good look at the shimming at the Whitewater takeout. That's impressive.
Well, I will say, as far as facilities that were built there, with what you have to work with the railroad, I mean, the bathrooms there are good, the parking lots are good. You know, it's just getting to the river. I think at Bridgeport, there is an opportunity for better access further up the river. You know, the road even goes back there, all you gotta do is unlock the gate, there's already a road that goes over the railroad tracks, and there's already a pathway third to the river. So a better boat launch already exists, it's just not accessible to people.
Yeah, that's a can of worms, because that road is, had been fully, right?
Currently, that is its designation.
It's a tough designation to alter.
It's
What's it called? Is it a railroad?
Well, it's designated administrative use only in the travel management plan for the NCA, which it's a difficult thing to alter that now that it's.
That would be a completely different action, yeah.
Well, action is not something that the state of Blackbeard. Even if it is the most logical, obvious solution, it is not necessarily the best.
Right. Well, and from my understanding, isn't that road there and the first bridge that you come to, those are private access for somebody's ranch that's on the other side of the river? So that's the reason why that road even exists. So when the plan was put in place, that was probably taken into consideration.
the struggle to be a good neighbor.
Yeah. So I do have one thing that I'd like to stress that a lot of people should complain about is calling yet another campsite on the Colorado River Basin Cottonwood Campground. I mean, don't we have enough problem campgrounds? No.
Well, you know, let me see here.
Yeah, can we call it?
I think you just solved this problem. Number 15 here, potential no name, Cottonwood. Ah, okay, you're right, you're right.
It's a lower Cottonwood.
Right.
Extra lower.
So I understand that this is an NCA process. And I understand the jurisdictional boundaries and all those pieces, but it seems kind of strange that a river that is contiguous and continuous and goes into, and bordered on with BLM lands, we're not looking at the stretch between 141 and Roller.
Not in this action. That being said, my contact information is on the e-planning website. And if you email me an interest in that, that's something that I will funnel up the appropriate channels.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah.
And SRMA, I mean, we've got an RMP for it and a travel plan. I mean, there's lots of work that's been done in that zone. It's the same field office, like, can we talk about some campsites here too?
Yeah.
Because I love that stretch.
It's phenomenal.
It makes an amazing opportunity to have multiple days within our community.
And to provide some justification for the land here. Talking about having connected actions that may add complexity to EPA. I think before one could begin to talk about anything along that stretch, is the improvements of the takeout of the road.
Right, there it is.
And so, which is a lot of support for it, but I think that as far as adding it to this action here, it would create a much more complex. The wheels are turning on that process, but I think as far as an achievable goal, it would be necessary.
Well, I did notice that there are several campsites that are added just before the whitewater takeout, which would allow you to, you could legitimately do a multi-day trip where you put on a Confluence, camp before Escalante, that's one day, then Escalante around Bridgeport is day 2, Bridgeport to around Whitewater is day 3, and then you can go all the way to the roller dam is day 4. So you are providing that opportunity there. But I had a question about, like, would dispersed camping be allowed through that area at all, or is it just going to be confined to the established campsites?
So within the stretch through Venus Escalante, it'll be confined to designated sites.
Okay. And I printed up, I handed it to Dan. This map's actually out of your brochure. And it looks like in the new map, you have eliminated that campsite right there. I just wanted to see if that was I'm looking for the name of it. It doesn't have a name on the old. It's the one just before Sage Flats.
Is that, yeah, so right there, so Sage Flats is right here. I think it's possible that it might have been on private.
It's BLM land.
It's BLM land.
Private is across the river. So there's that peach orchard that's in that bend. So this bend right here, all this is a peach orchard. This is all private, but this is all, according to the Delta County GIS, it's on this side. It's actually right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to relook at
I
it.
never had a name for it.
Is it trust line now? Do you know, or is it just kind of established use?
I think it's just places where people camp, but it's on their map.
Yeah, and I don't recall which camp that is, but yeah, that's a good one to take note of, and let's check that one out. Yeah, because most of the camps that we do have posts.
Yeah.
In the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of it right now, so we'd have to look.
Yeah. I know.
More of them than there used to be.
I know we had one that was removed from our proposed list just because of massive blowdowns and great potential for more blowdowns.
Right.
But that was further downstream. That one I can't speak to because I've never seen that on a map before. So yeah.
Let's take a look in the first couple iterations of this. We've been talking about this since the RFP 2017. Its next predecessor was doing a lot of work with the resource specialists. And so there are certain campsites gained, certain campsites left, and then you want to know why certain campsites left. A lot of times there were issues with cultural resources that were a little bit too close, and that's why if there's a GIS layer that may include some of the campsites, it may not be available now, but we can just go look that one out. I'm just curious what that one is.
Yeah. I mean,
And then my other question is Rattlesnake Canyon. You can drive into there and you can go all the way up to the river, but that's also a potential spot for camping along the river. There's a couple big cottonwood trees there, big clearing, and it looks as though people have camped there, but I didn't see it on your map there.
yeah,
That would be above Escalante. So that was another potential. If you put on a Confluence Park, you could camp there just before, I think it's 3 miles before Escalante.
okay.
It's in the NCA, yes.
That was a gold mine.
Yeah, you can go pan for gold there, apparently. There's a sign.
Can you still? Yeah, I mean, within the NCA, I mean, there are some limitations on what you can take. But recreational gold panning that's allowable use.
You can ban, but you
Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna be striking you rich out there. But yes, I mean, recreational gold panning.
Finding nuggets, you're supposed to leave it and contact Dave Gross.
Rattlesnake, I mean, just as we haven't identified it. It may be a good opportunity to include something like that as not in the plan, to just have something like that available for driving or hiking camp along the river.
Okay.
So it could be a camp spot.
Could be a campsite, not for boaters, but.
Okay. Well, and on the map, you guys do provide a campsite upstream of that. Was it called?
Kelso?
or something?
also draw.
Yeah.
Yeah. I stare at maps a lot, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's a little bit further out, probably another 2 miles out. But I actually, during low water recently, I did the Confluence to Escalante, just day tripped it. I've been living down in Delta for the last 3 years, and so I got a buddy of mine who wants to learn how to raft, so we've been doing all the stretches in that area. It's a beautiful stretch, and it's definitely worth doing. I mean, I think that once people realize that, it is gonna see a lot more traffic. What worries me about that is only having one campsite in that zone. So that leads to my next question of, how difficult will it be to add campsites at a later time if it does start to get more popular?
Probably this difficult.
So, but
Um,
I mean, it's the same question we were having earlier about, because we're looking exclusively at the NCA right now. But, any campsites upstream within the Oakland Poverty Field office of the BLM, or downstream in the Grand Junction Field office, there's opportunity later there.
Yeah.
So, working on that idea with an understanding of the complexities of altering existing plans or modifying the existing plans in the future, would it be possible to say, identify some potential camping spots that could be brought into action in the future and seed that into this current plan, like the RMP seeded the idea that there need some sort of generally a 50-50 approach?
Some language around potential for expansion.
Yeah. A capacity managing.
Yeah, I'd be curious to, it's something I could look into, see if there's other examples like that are like that. I wouldn't know the best way to write that into the environmental analysis so that it would be practical. Because I guess the one thing that I'm heavily reliant on our river rangers and looking at our inventory right now, and everything that's not a potential site, I don't know why that is.
I think the one thing I would say is any new sites that anyone feels should be added, if you could include in a scoping comment, an exact location. Because what we would need to do is, before we complete any environmental analysis, is actually go and get some survey work, cultural survey, plant survey. Because if folks are camping on it, we need to have a full review before it's actually developed. And that would be included in the environmental assessment. But yeah, there are other sites that you'd like included, and specifically your area.
Yes.
My concern is one of the reasons why that stretch of river is not popular like Ruby Horse Thief is I mean, they're very, very similar. But the takeouts at both Bridgeport and Whitewater have been also, for the entire time I've been boating, I've been told by people, oh, you can't run anything on the Gunnison because there's a roller dam over there dumped on. And so as people start to realize, like, oh, wait, no, that roller dam is actually pretty far down there, and you can run a very long stretch without coming anywhere near it, and there's a takeout right before it. I think that stretch of river is going to become more popular, and that's going to make it much more difficult to get just these handful. And if you look at Ruby Horse Thief and how many available campsites there are versus what you're proposing here, I think you're talking double on Ruby Horse Thief for the same amount of mileage. And so that's a major concern that I think should be addressed by people.
It's shorter, isn't it?
25.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you include all, like you said, what was it from Confluence Park?
From Confluence Park, it's 59 miles down, but realistically, most people do Escalante to Whitewater, and that is your 25-mile stretch. So you're talking about a mile-to-mile comparison, and you're not talking about the same number of campsites.
The other thing is that I think one of the ways that Ruby Horse Thief has proven to be pretty successful is that you get clumps of sites, and then stretches where there aren't sites, and that allows, you might not be able to get the one that you're looking for, but you can get the one right next to it, and it's also pretty awesome. And that allows for a bunch of people to be on the river, but still also have their own independent experience without too much conflict issues. Where this, it looks, the map shows that there's fewer clumps and fewer overall number of campsites. So that seems potentially, as use increases and the renown spreads, that might be a conflict.
Yeah. Definitely, I mean, valid concerns for sure. Like Dan addressed the difficulty with the proposed sites. The area is rich with cultural resources. It's rich with threatened and endangered species, namely hookless cactus. And then there's also the accessibility from the river. I know that, we looked at several spots on a couple of floats I've taken this last season, where it's like, oh, that'd be great if it wasn't for, the 5 feet of elevation you have to overcome immediately upon, taking out. But again, I think if you know of spots, definitely include those in your comments, because that's what this is for.
It's that balance, and maybe 20 years from now, we need to reassess and add additional campsites, but it's definitely that balance on how many spots do we want to allocate and set aside and make it an actual camping area for the amount of use that we're seeing right now.
Right.
And as we've seen in trails, the space that I'm most familiar with, what we see today is blown away in a year or 2 years. So one of the ways that I think we addressed it in the trail space is defining very clearly management objectives and experiences objectives. So like, this is how we want people to experience this space. And if we're not meeting those criteria because there's too much congestion and it's degrading the resource and people aren't doing what they set out to do on these trails or in this river space, then we need to make those changes to address that. So maybe our comments can help direct that we want this type of experience, define that quite clearly so that in the future, when we're no longer meeting those criteria, we can be directed to take action.
Yeah. I think your thinking is well on track there.
And I think that was part of the discussion that we initially had with the first campsites, because it's a little bit different experience. You're not camping with companies. You're camping south. Unless you're at the mountain.
Well, even we camped at the mountain, visiting us on, was it Labor Day weekend? We had a group of people on one of the big holiday weekends, and we got one of those sites. And one of the sites near us, they were having like a laser light show and, music playing and all that stuff. until you hiked up and went down and over to where they were, you had no idea that any of that was going on.
Yeah.
Like up high on the cliff, you saw some light flash every once in a while, but otherwise you had no idea they were over there habitat. So.
Yeah, it is, it's very similar to Stratford River, but it is.
Does anybody else have any more questions or concerns?
No, I'll just get back on that site. Comment.
Yeah.
Right?
What's the timeline?
Thank you.
So you got 7 days in this comment period for the scoping process, and then you guys are gonna produce a draft EA proposal with alternatives, and that timeline is?
Roughly 6 months.
And since you have our emails, like, will we be on finish now? Any updates or?
I certainly can take a copy of that from you.
Yeah. So
And
that is actually for the use of the room, but we'll make sure that that all gets added in. We can spread that around.
Are you here all day? Is it COVID?
Yeah, we're here Monday through Friday from 9 to 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll stop in. I go down to Dell.
Awesome, stop in anytime. I'll show you guys the bike and stuff.
you want to take that right here and show the,
Well, I was gonna say also those packets that I gave you at the very bottom there, the QR codes, you can take a picture of that with your phone and it should take you to the link. But in case that's not working for whatever reason, I also put the URL at the bottom of that. So you can type that into your computer. One of those codes takes you to our email list. And we're trying to increase our email list so that we can get the word out to more people about things like this.
For the paddle club?
For the paddle club, yeah. And then as the BLM moves forward with this, we're gonna keep track of it. And, you know, I just met Zach here, but I've known Dan for many years from the Climbers Coalition. I've worked with him a few times. We're hoping to track this as it goes, and we'll definitely try and get the word out to people that, hey, you know, it's time for another comment period, and try and get more people involved. That's one of the things that we really want to do, so. All right. And for anybody that's watching this on Facebook, I'll post a link to that. You know, sorry about the feed there. We're not really set up for this type of page yet. We'll get there. This is our first go around. It'll get better with time, I promise. So I just want to thank everybody for coming and thank everybody for watching. And you know, if you have any more questions, the email that I'm using for the paddle club right now is gbpaddle@gmail.com. We do have a website. We are in the process of building a new website. You know, as things progress, we'll have more and more stuff out there. We do have an Instagram account now. There's 2 Instagram accounts out there though. So when you find both of them, look for the one that actually has new stuff posted. I don't know the story behind it. I've been trying to get everything from Instagram to delete it, but if you don't do Facebook, we do Instagram. We are out there on that. We're working on more of that type of stuff. Anyways, please take the time to fill out the comments. The BLM does need these comments so that they can make it more user-friendly for our user group, but then also for the other user groups that use it.
And you're Randall.
I'm Randall, yes, sorry. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.